An eerie figure caught on camera running around a soccer field, only no one saw it at the time. Did the ghost of Michael Jackson show up on an episode of Larry King? And did a woman possessed by a Jinn call into a live TV show? These are spirits that were caught on live TV. Now, when you first start watching this, you may not think much of it. Looks like a streaker running around a soccer field, right? Or football field for the British viewers out there. Thing is, I'm not sure it's as simple as that. See, this person runs around for a long time. There are multiple angles here where we see this person running both through the audience and right on the edge of the field, and no one seems to react. And the more you look at this figure, the stranger it looks, in that it's not quite solid. It's semi-translucent and almost seems to run right through people. Strangest part for me though is when it actually looks to be running on the field. If someone just bursts onto a soccer field, they'd be escorted off in a matter of seconds. I mean, we've seen this happen with streakers before, and you know, of course, streakers don't look like semi-translucent ghostly forms like this. This is a very strange video. This live CNN broadcast has become pretty infamous for having possibly captured Michael Jackson's ghost on camera. Now, is Michael Jackson's spirit evil? Well, that depends where you fall on all the controversy behind him. That's a rabbit hole I will not be getting into, but this video is pretty interesting. So this was early July of 2009, less than a month after MJ had died, and they're doing an interview at Neverland Ranch when we see this. Okay, so it's a shadow, big deal. Well, there may be more to it than that. Slowing things down and zooming in on this shadowy shape more, and you'll notice that it kind of resembles that famous head tilted down Jackson pose, and if you look really closely, you'll see that this supposed shadow seems to cast its own shadow on the floor, almost like it's not a shadow at all that's being cast on the wall, more like a dark figure moving across the hallway. The other strange thing, who would have cast this shadow? We never see anyone actually walk by. Obviously, shadows can be kind of iffy, but this one is a little bit spooky, given the context. Did a woman possessed by a Jinn call into this live talk show? So this happened on an Islamic channel hosting a live call-in session. A woman calls in and shares that she believes people have used black magic against her, and that a demon or a Jinn has taken over her body. She talks about how she's doing her best to combat it through constant prayer, and throughout the call, she makes these really unsettling noises. She also starts to laugh maniacally at one point. Take a listen to this. Now, was this woman really possessed? Who am I to say? But even if she wasn't, there may have been something else going on with her, something still very real, which is equally sad and disturbing. Or it may have been a hoax. Either way, it's an eerie video. Creepy phone calls just get under my skin. It's something about the fact that I can't see the person on the other end of the phone. Back in 2021, news anchor Sam Hessler was doing live shots during the morning news from the Green Ridge Cemetery in Saratoga County, New York. Nobody noticed anything at the time until a viewer reached out to the station saying that he'd seen something walking behind her. Take a look. It passes by pretty fast, so here it is slowed down now. Now, Green Ridge Cemetery has somewhat of a reputation for being a spooky spot. Not only are there some really creepy statues of some very old graves here, but people have reported seeing some strange things. Not too out of the ordinary for a cemetery though, to be fair. Now that's a good question. Was there a ghost at an Albuquerque Dion's? And what is a Dion's even? Well, it turns out even a lot of Americans won't be familiar because Dion's are only found in 3 states, mostly in New Mexico. Anyway, this particular one might be haunted. Look at this. So all this stuff just slides off the counter seemingly on its own. No one is anywhere near it. You could say the stuff had just been sitting there precariously and fell off, but it doesn't really look like that. It looks like someone took their arm and swept everything off the table, only of course there's no arm in sight. Anyway, what do you all think of this one? This one sent a shiver down my spine. So back in 2018, CBS Colorado reported this really eerie story on the news. Police in Pueblo, Colorado had received a phone call just before 3:30 in the morning. The person on the other end hung up, so the police called back. There was an answer, but the 911 dispatcher could only hear static on the other end of the phone and the occasional inaudible muttering. Take a listen to this.
Hello? Hello?
Now, phone interference isn't uncommon, sure, but what makes this call extra chilling is that it was coming from a funeral home and cemetery. Police were sent out to the place, called Imperial Memorial Gardens, to check things out, but when they got there, they found that the funeral home was totally locked up. No lights were on, and there was nobody there. No one living, that is, and that just gives me the willies. In 2019, 9 News Australia did a story on a pub owned by a man named Alistair Collins, who claims the place is haunted, and he had tons of late-night security footage to prove it. Yeah, it wasn't just one incident. There's footage of chairs moving on their own, umbrellas opening up, doors slamming. The place is just bustling with activity even long after it empties out for the night. At one point, the news anchor tries to recreate pulling a chair out in one smooth motion like it seemed to do on its own in one piece of security footage, and he couldn't quite repeat it. The ground is just too uneven, so I have to imagine doing something like this with string would be really difficult. They also try to repeat the umbrella opening on its own and find that it would be next to impossible for someone to open the umbrella and not be caught on camera. The creepiest bit comes from an electrician who had a ghostly encounter at the pub while doing renovations though. He heard the small doors swinging right by the kitchen, followed by loud footsteps going up the stairs right next to them. He called out to the only other person in the pub at the time, who walked out from the kitchen. So they both went upstairs to check things out, only to find the top floor was totally empty. This is Kenneth Copeland. Now, if you've never heard of him, he's a televangelist who basically makes a living, a very good living, mind you, just screwing gullible, desperate people out of their money. He's actually told people in some of his sermons that if they only have 2 dimes to their name, to give 1 to the Lord. Through his church, of course, all so that he can buy more private planes, jet skis, mansions, and God knows what else. He's pretty much the devil, and the irony of that shouldn't be lost on anyone, but somehow there are still people who fall for his utter BS. Here he is talking in tongues. Now, it sounds to me like he's imitating Portuguese, not, communicating with some holy higher power. Again, I don't get the appeal of this guy. He doesn't even look friendly. He's got those beady little eyes. He looks deranged even when he's smiling. Just a real uncomfortable aura around this guy. In 2019, NBC did a report on a ghostly photograph taken at a Baltimore eatery called Bertha's Restaurant and Bar. According to one of the owners, Laura Norris, the place has been haunted for decades, and she's communicated with the entity on more than one occasion. Apparently, the block that this restaurant is on is just full of ghosts. There's a ghost tour that starts at Bertha's, and one tourist captured this image right here. It looks a bit like some sort of ghostly figure reaching out of the 3rd floor window, and there is said to be a ghost that stalks that very floor, the spirit of a young girl who's often seen skipping through the hallway. In 1991, ABC aired a pretty wild and unsettling episode of 2020 that showed an exorcism happening live. The girl at the center of it was named Gina, and she was from Florida. According to the church, Gina had been dealing with demonic possession, so they decided to perform an exorcism to get rid of whatever was tormenting her. There were 2 priests involved. One was just called Priest A, the other was Reverend James Labar, who thought that airing the exorcism would give, quote, hope to those who may be afflicted. The whole thing is a very uncomfortable watch. Gina is seen shaking and screaming, and just possession aside even, she was clearly going through something. Even for people who believe in possession, it was a chilling watch, but for others, it looked more like she was going through some serious psychological distress. After the exorcism, Gina was sent to a psychiatric hospital for treatment. She was released later on, but after that, no one really knows what happened to her. With all that said, Been your host, James. I'll catch you, yes, you specifically, in the next video.